Hey guys, today I want to talk about something that's really interesting to me, and that is why the truth is important. Some people ask, why is it important to know what's true and what isn't true? Does it matter if something's true or not? Um, isn't it better to see if a belief is good for the public and helps people achieve a certain goal rather than focusing on whether it's true or not? First of all, the truth is incredibly useful. Think about it. When people first started discovering that the earth was actually round, and that it span around the sun, and that there were the laws of gravity, people didn't know what use it would be at first. But um, without this knowledge, we couldn't have achieved space travel, which may enrich human lives and even be useful for the preservation of our species if we ever decide to colonize another planet. You may not always know what information is going to be useful and what's not, but oftentimes that it's an idea that's true. And when you can see the world in an objective way, you can know certain things you couldn't before. When trying to decide things, your beliefs color your views of the world. And when your beliefs are untrue, that you can't navigate yourself correctly. The second thing is that a person can't choose to make themselves believe something on purpose. For example, it may benefit me to think there is a magical eagle that brings me presents every single day or something, or gives me magic spells that that help me get through the day or something. I know that's a really weird example, but I can't trick myself into believing that. I could brainwash myself, but that's not good. That's not the natural way of things, and also that your brain, which is constantly looking for knowledge, would resist this process every single step of the way. Now, I'm not here to argue about whether or not you should believe in God. I myself don't believe in God, so keep this in mind. But there are Christians who try to argue that the Bible is true by mentioning like certain arguments and points. And there are other Christians who basically are like, oh yeah, it's not technically true. Or, this could be, maybe this isn't exactly their line of logic, but if you're not a Christian, you'll end up being a nihilist. I take several problems with this logic. Oh, by the way, nihilist means a person who believes life has no meaning, but I take several issues with this logic. Number one, that doesn't change to me whether I think God is real or not. If you try to argue that life has no meaning without God, all that convinces me of is that life has no meaning. Regardless, that you should try to live a fulfilled life, we are creatures driven towards pain and pleasure. Whether life has meaning or not, that we should still try to fill them, because even if life doesn't matter, that life does matter because we care about it. That's just our very nature as human beings. But regardless, all that aside, also, they claim you have no morality, no meaning. if morality and meaning are actually important, so important that this is even a concern, why would you even need to make up stories in order to preserve them? Obviously, there's a reason other than God if you're gonna take this approach. So, anyways, if you're a Christian, don't use this logic. Like, again, this isn't me arguing about the existence of God. It's just, this is an extremely flawed, stupid way to present your religion. Learning new things about the world is really exciting. But if all the things you learn about the world are made up, they really don't mean anything. Things are amazing when you know they're true. You know that, the earth is a giant ball of rock that spins around a fiery ball of gas known as the sun. That wouldn't be amazing if I just pulled that out of my ass. That would be a creative story, but it wouldn't be intriguing. That's the other thing. The truth is intriguing. It was like Richard Dawkins said, that explaining a rainbow doesn't ruin its beauty. It shows the beauty behind it. The process of how light splits into its multiple components that we perceive as color when it's reflected off of water. It's interesting. Also the other thing is, a lot of times people don't cling on to old, untrue ideas because the ideas are good for them. They hold on to them because they don't want their delusions broken. And when you know something's true, but you refuse to face it, it's not a healthy way to live. Now, it is true that human beings are very, very biased creatures. We, a lot of times we like to pretend that our ideas are logical, that we worked them out, but a lot of it's based off of intuition and our life experiences. But here's the thing. This is not always necessarily a bad thing. Our life experiences tend to prove things. We associate things with pain and pleasure, and that's where many of our beliefs come from. We see the world in a certain way. Each person sees it in a different way we couldn't possibly imagine, because our lives prove the things we believe. In a way, that all of our different perceptions of the world are its own reality. We interpret things very different. So it does seem that reality can be different from person to person. However, we still should make sure not to be overtly biased when coming up with new ideas, or when hearing ideas that contradict our own. You should always approach things you hear with an open mind. And you may be thinking, well, I'm perfectly objective. But you're probably not. We all are very weak when it comes to bias. Humans are emotional creatures, and it is natural. Which is why that you should always do a little exercise where you consider the other person's experiences, the other person's life, the things that led them to that point of view, even if you don't switch beliefs. Also, sometimes, instead of trying to be objective when you form an opinion, you just have to look at an overall broad topic and explore it. Instead of automatically forming an opinion, you have to absorb the information into your mind. And it takes a little bit of quelling of your ego to do this. Like right now, I'm studying economics in order to get an unbiased view on how money should be handled by our government. The thing is we approach a lot of our opinions with ego. And I'm not perfect about this, and neither am I going to pretend to be, even though that I'm giving you advice. Because I've come to an understanding that, for people, a lot of their opinions, even if they claim they're objective, many of them are personal. We get our idea of who we are by the opinions we espouse. Many of people's ideas, in a way, tell their life story. Sometimes we have to be like children. Children can learn languages really fast. I mean, children don't assume that they know better than everyone else. They're eager to learn. And I've been trying to implement this more in my life. There was a man attempting to bring Christianity to a tribe of very isolated Native Americans. But the problem was that their language was considered impossible to crack. So what he did was he stayed in the village attempting to try to figure out what the different words meant. People would tell him a word and they would demonstrate what it meant. And he would try to say it, and the people would think that it was funny watching him. And he believed that there were things that every language had, based on certain structures and human archetypes. But none of these rules were applying to the language. And basically, he would try to put the different words into different contexts, or he would hear a word that he had learned be used in a completely different context, and he would realize he didn't understand it. The language was so foreign to the way he thought of language, he couldn't figure it out. Now, in this tribe, the men went out and hunted, and the women stayed at home. And the men always asked for him to hunt with them, and he always refused. He wanted to stay in the village. But, he was very concerned. He saw that children were learning it easily. They could speak it fluently. So it wasn't too hard of a language. If they could know it, so could he. One day, he decided to go out with the Native American people and hunt, and he realized that he suddenly understood the language. He realized that the language could not be separated from their way of life. And with this, he realized that he had felt superior to the Native Americans, and he couldn't learn from these people if he felt superior. He probably felt, he was Christian, he was European, he knew better. And he was the first to crack their language, and he wrote parts of the Bible in their language and gave it to them. Of course, though, that this feeling of a loss of pride caused a conflict within him that made him, realize that maybe there wasn't a God. But anyways, that's the story. That's how you learn. sometimes that you have to revert to a feeling of inferiority, not like feelings of hurt or wounded insecurity, but like, you can't learn from someone that you feel smug and superior to. A person can't teach you if you consider them beneath you. One more thing. Being open-minded should not be the same as being gullible. People often, in the name of being open-minded, let in lots of rubbish about the world that simply isn't true, into their minds. Sometimes there are people who rationalize a false idea so well that you can't come up with the words to be able to argue against it. A flawed, lesser idea where people don't think very much. And, you shouldn't disregard that maybe that person is wrong. That could be your intuition picking up on some information that you couldn't fully. Regardless, that you shouldn't use this to always justify an opinion you're comfortable with. It could be your bias, it could be your inability to accept the truth. Maybe you can't accept something immediately. Sometimes you have to explore. Sometimes you have to wait it out. Maybe mix it with a little bit with the opinion you currently have. But yeah, your emotions, even your biases themselves can be important. But overall, with this video, what I think is important is the truth, and unbiasedly absorbing information with an open mind to understand it. Just many topics in general, without having to theorize at first. There are some people who disagree with many of the notions of truth. And I think that there is a correctness to their ideas, and that was something I also wanted to explore. Anyways, this is Brendanz Dystopia. Peace out.